What has the Chinese case taught us about the relationship between civil society, such as NGOs, and the state?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it reminds me of, I think when you and I talked about having this conversation, I mentioned the fact that I've been studying NGOs for 20 years, which made me feel really old. And it predates the time that I was a graduate student even. I was in the policy domain in Washington, D.C., researching Chinese NGOs that were working specifically in the environmental sector. And the number of times that I had conversations with people in D.C. where they would push back and say, well, you're not talking about NGOs. It can't possibly be that there are NGOs in the Chinese context because of what you're already pointing out, which is the expectation that NGOs are either playing sort of the role in kind of a 𝗘𝗃𝗀𝘀 sense as working with the state in a democratic context, right? Sort of serving as an opportunity for society to have, its grievances heard and properly understood, and feedback mechanism, all those things. Or in a more Gramscian sense, that they're very counter the state, and what has led a lot of folks to believe that NGOs equal democracy. Either NGOs lead to democracy, or the presence of NGOs in any particular context is the sign of democracy. So observers of my research and other research in the early years essentially didn't understand what was going on. It couldn't possibly be that these are NGOs. To answer your question then, what does the Chinese case demonstrate to us? It's quite clear that NGOs are a lot different than we have long thought, that scholars have long thought. That NGOs don't necessarily fit either of these molds. They can still serve the interests of society, but simultaneously serve the interests of the state. And what's, I think, so fascinating about the Chinese case is that, over at least 20 years plus, you've seen an evolving relationship between these organizations and the state, a lot of testing of boundaries, testing the sort of what's possible on the part of NGOs, and even from the state, sort of what are the things that we can actually enlist these NGOs to do to help us govern. It's led to this understanding that NGOs and the space within which they operate is a lot more porous, a lot less defined as I think both scholars and observers have long thought.